Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I am back today with another romance subgenre Rex video. This time all about historical romances. And just like my enemies to lovers romances video and honestly all of my other subgenre and tropes recommendations videos, I have too many favorites to make just one video for it. So this is going to be part one of all of my favorite historical romances. And I'm going to try to limit myself to maybe 3 Lisa Kleypas books for each video just because like I love all of her freaking books. And I can't really just make a historical romance video of just Lisa Kleypas. I mean, I can, but I shouldn't. I'll probably end up making some like Lisa Kleypas spotlight video though in the future because I do still want to do author spotlights. I have so many authors that I have in mind for that. Like besides Lisa Kleypas, I want to do Nalini Singh, Tessa Bailey, as well as a whole bunch more. So we'll see when I ever get on that. But today, here are just a few of some of my favorite historical romances. And I'll start off with the very first historical romance book that I remember reading. And that is the Highlander series by Karen Marie Moning. I always thought that I discovered historical romance through Sarah MacLean, and while I did grow to love historical romance so much more because of her and her Rules of Scoundrel series, I actually remembered that like even before that, even before I started blogging, that I read Karen Marie Moning's Highlander books because I fell in love with her Fever series, which I talk about in my Urban Fantasy Rex video, which I'll link down below. This was probably my very first historical romance series ever, and of course it's gonna be with some gorgeous Scottish Highlanders. The series is not your typical historical romance series just because there's a little bit of magic going on with time travel. So the first book in the Highlander series is called Beyond the Highland Mist, and in that one the heroine is from modern day and she time travels back to medieval Scotland. Like, I love this book. I love this whole series. I haven't actually finished it. I've got a couple more left later on in the series, but I will eventually finish it. I love Karen Marie Moning. Her writing is fantastic. She writes the best alpha heroes ever. My favorites of the series are books 4 and 5. These can all be read as standalones, although I do recommend if you want to read 5 to read 4 beforehand because those two books are about twins and their stories do kind of connect with each other. But if you feel like getting swept away to the gorgeous highlands of Scotland, if you want to fall in love with these possessive, powerful alpha males who will do anything to claim the woman that they love, definitely read this series. It is so good, so addicting. Next up is one of my queens of historical romance, the one who really got me into reading more of the modern historical romances. I believe her books were the very first historical romance books that I ever reviewed on my blog. And I wrote so much in those, like paragraphs and paragraphs about them, just because I love them so much. And that is Sarah MacLean and her Rules of Scoundrel series. I'm missing the first book, which is called A Rogue by Any Other Name. All of these titles are so adorable. Book 2 is called One Good Earl Deserves a Lover. Book 3 is No Good Duke Goes Unpunished. And then the last one is Never Judge a Lady by her cover. The series is absolutely brilliant. Once I read the first book, I literally could not stop reading. The series centers around the 4 partners, the 4 co-owners of this gaming hell in London, basically like a gambling place. And they all have a very dark and dangerous reputation. The first book is a former childhood friends to lovers story. The hero pretty much deserts the heroine when he and his family loses like everything, their fortune, their land. But years later, now that he's wealthy and successful, although that was all gained by like an underground part of London, he forces the heroine in marriage. So childhood friends to lovers, forced marriage, all that good stuff, a lot of angst, highly recommended. But I didn't actually fall in love with the series until I read One Good Earl Deserves a Lover. I am obsessed with this series. This is still one of my all-time favorite historical romances ever. If you love a dorky, quirky heroine, Pippa is absolutely perfect. Pippa is quite the math and science whiz, but she's never experienced anything like passion or lust. So she propositions Cross, who is one of the co-owners of the gaming hell, who also has this really scandalous reputation, and that's why she chooses him. They have fantastic chemistry from the start. Like, just imagine nerdy characters who are super hot for each other. So good. I felt like this book was so unique. These characters were very different from anything that I've ever read before. Pippa is still one of my all-time favorite heroines ever, and I just fell head over heels in love with this story. It is angsty, it's edgy, it's sweet, it has its romantic, adorable moments, and I just really need people to read this book. My second favorite of the series is No Good Duke Goes Unpunished. And this book is about Temple, who is pretty much the brawler of the four partners. He is big, he handles the underground fighting ring at their gaming hell, and he falls in love with a woman he thought he murdered years ago. So yes, it is a bit complicated. Years ago, his father was engaged to the heroine Mara, but of course Mara didn't want to marry some old dude who was 3 times her age, so she faked her own death, but sadly that death was pinned on the hero. But years later, she's back and she needs help with settling a debt. So she makes a deal with Temple that she will set things straight about her non-murder and he'll help her with her debt. I love this book so much. I remember when I got approved for the ARC for it, I screamed like crazy. It is just so well written, so angsty, I couldn't put it down. And like, isn't this story just crazy, you know, falling in love with someone who everyone thought you murdered? But I loved it. It was fantastic. I highly recommend it. I won't talk too much about the 4th book though, just because talking about who the main character is slightly a spoiler for those who do want to start the series. But yeah, if you haven't read this Rules of Scoundrel series, I highly recommend it. Next up is a book that I only read earlier this year, even though it's been out for so long, and it's a classic, not just historical romance, but a classic romance, one that everyone loves and raves about. And once I read it, I finally realized why everyone loves it so much, and that is Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I am obsessed with this book. I cannot recommend it enough. It is a wonderful, fantastic, full of chemistry, enemies to lovers romance. I've said it before, but this book probably has the best banter that I've ever read. Jessica and Sebastian are on fire together. The story is kind of Beauty and the Beast, just because the hero is scarred and he has a very dangerous reputation. Sebastian is pretty much known as the devil spawn to the rest of London society, and Jessica, our heroine, is the only woman, the only person who has ever been able to stand up to him and make him curious about another person. Jessica is who I want to be when I grow up. I loved her character. She is one of the most headstrong, fantastic, intelligent heroines that I've ever read. I could go on and on about how fantastic this book is, but you should just read it and understand why so many people love it. Next up is actually a novella, and that is Unlocked by Courtney Milan. I remember looking for some bully romances, and this isn't quite a bully romance just because this is what happens after the bullying. The hero is a former bully of the heroines, and of course the reason why Evan bullied Elaine was that he had a crush on her. That doesn't make it any better, of course, but he does go away for 10 years and he regrets everything that he's ever done to her. And so 10 years later, he is back in London society and he wants to make things right. He doesn't expect, you know, forgiveness or friendship or anything more, but he does want to apologize, and he does. There is a ton of groveling. Evan is so sincerely apologetic. He puts a stop to any bullying that still continues to happen, especially coming from his cousin. Elaine doesn't make it easy for him, but eventually they do settle on a friendship. So this novella is also a friends to lovers romance, and it is just so amazing because you can clearly tell how much Evan treasures his friendship and his relationship with Elaine, and even though he wants more, he would never push her. And this is just such a well-written novella. I really wish it was longer, but it really does pack a punch in the few pages that it has. You can feel the heartache, that angst, that groveling, that sincere like regret on Evan's part. Like, I had an ache in my heart the whole time I was reading it. So good. I love Courtney Milan's writing. I haven't read enough of her books, but solely because of this novella, I want to read more. Next up is my absolute queen of historical romance, and you all know who it is. That is Lisa Kleypas and her Ravenel series. These are books 2 and 3 of the series. The first book is called Cold Hearted Rake. I am particularly obsessed with these two books. Highly recommend them. But the first book is really great too. The heroine, her husband dies, and the hero is the new owner of her late husband's estate. In Marrying Winterborn, the hero is a rags to riches tycoon. He owns pretty much the first like shopping mall in London. So he's filthy rich and he's a powerful businessman, and he ends up falling for this really shy and sweet heroine named Helen. It's very much a opposites attract because Reese is that intense, alpha, obsessive, possessive hero, while Helen is very much a wallflower and very shy. I love the dynamic between these two. I love a good opposites attract book, and this is perfect. So just imagine this as like your historical billionaire romance. But this book, Devil in Spring, is my all-time favorite book of Lisa Kleypas's still. And yes, it beat Devil in Winter for me. Like, I really enjoyed Devil in Winter, who is about the parents of the hero in this book. But there's just something about this book that is so special to me. Like, it spoke to my heart. The heroine Pandora is one of my all-time favorites. I love a good quirky heroine, and Pandora is just that. She is a heroine who doesn't want to have anything to do with marriage or husbands or babies. She just wants to be able to create board games and make a business out of it, and she knows that having a husband, having a family is going to prevent that from happening. But of course, she gets caught in a scandalous position with one of the most eligible bachelors of London, who is Gabriel St. Vincent. I love Gabriel so much. Oh my god. He is so sweet, so loving, and so gentle with Pandora, but at the same time, he can definitely be alpha and possessive. You can just so clearly tell how Gabriel falls in love with Pandora. Like, he literally can't help himself but fall for this quirky, adorable, wonderful, intelligent girl. This book is just really special with some of the best characters that I've ever read, and honestly, I was really happy to get like Evie and Sebastian from Devil in Winter's, their son's story. We also get their daughter's story in another book in the series called Devil's Daughter. And then we also get Pandora's twin sister story in the next book in the series, which is out next year, called Chasing Cassandra. I love this book. I love this series. I highly recommend it. If you do read Devil in Spring, I do recommend reading Devil in Winter first. Again, this is the parent story of the hero from Devil in Spring. A lot of people do say Devil in Winter is their favorite, and I can totally understand it, but Devil in Spring holds my heart. Next up is a book that I only recently just read, but I absolutely loved it. It is Tempest by Beverly Jenkins. It was my very first Beverly Jenkins book, and I fell so hard for her writing. She is a fantastic author. I chose this one first because it's a mail order bride trope, and the main character's meet cute is the heroine accidentally shooting the hero. So how could I not read that, right? It's one of the few westerns that I've read and loved. It's not like cowboy western, but it is set in the Midwest in the US, so not your typical like British historical romance. No one is titled. The hero is the town doctor, and the heroine moves to Wyoming to marry him and take care of his young daughter. I loved Reagan, Colton, and Colton's daughter so much. Reagan is the complete opposite of Colton's former wife, who was docile, quiet, and shy. She doesn't do anything that he tells her to do, and she is very much a force to be reckoned with. These two challenge each other in the best of ways, and I just love the way that they slowly fell for each other, even with that, you know, not so great start. Colton's daughter Anna is a total sweetheart. I adored her character, but the star of this book was definitely Reagan, the heroine. I admired her character so much, and I kind of wish more historical romance heroines were like her, you know, not wallflowers and not shy. So she was like a breath of fresh air for me. And again, I loved Miss Bez's writing, and I definitely need to read more of her books. And for my last historical romance for this video, I promise I will be talking about more historical romances in future videos. But this one is My American Duchess by Eloisa James. This was my first book by Eloisa James, and I fell head over heels in love with it and became a lifelong fan, just like I did for Tempest by Beverly Jenkins. This book is kind of a marriage of convenience. The heroine is engaged to the hero's brother, but she ends up marrying the hero, who is the Duke, instead. She's an American heiress, but once she marries Trent, she does try to integrate herself in like this London society. Mary and Trent are freaking adorable together. I love them so much. Trent is definitely that kind of hero who doesn't believe he can love, but of course Mary shows him otherwise. There is a lot of good groveling towards the end, which is of course my favorite. There are some adorable puppies that are being adopted in this one too. It's just such a wonderful, adorable, sweet read, and you can't help but fall for Trent, Mary, and their story. I've read a bunch of her other books, but this one is still my favorite of hers. So that was my list for part 1 of historical romance favorites. I promise I will be talking about Tessa Dare and Kerrigan Byrne and many more in my future historical romance videos. I still also need to continue on with my enemies to lovers romance Rex video, so be on the lookout for that sometime. Here is just a sneak peek of some of my other favorites. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what some of your favorite historical romance books or authors are. I'll leave a link to all the books that I mentioned in the description below as always, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!